The Imperial Navy was once the superpower of the galaxy, and the sight of Star Destroyers overhead would instill terror in even the most hardened of rebels. However, following the Battle of Endor, this all changed. Star Destroyers became a rare sight, and the Empire struggled to remain in control as the New Republic loomed ever closer. But what exactly happened to the Imperial fleets following the Battle of Endor? Now, we're going to start things off right after the destruction of the Death Star at the Battle of Endor, and as we know, this was a complete and utter disaster for the Empire. With their superweapon Gong alongside the Executor-class Dreadnought with Admiral Piet, there was no real chain of command left standing. The Imperial morale was crushed, and the Imperial fleet now stood disorientated against the entire Rebel fleet, bolstered by their victory, so chaos ensued. One by one, the Star Destroyers chose to withdraw and escape the chaos. However, this led to a lot of them being caught off guard and just getting caught up by the Rebel fleet. So, as we've said many times before, the Empire is not very sustainable as there was no succession plan. For decades, Sidious had led the Empire single-handedly and unquestioned, and it kept people in line. The problem now was, there was no one to keep order. Numerous Imperials began to declare themselves Sidious's successor, and they all began to engage in petty power plays. This in the Navy more than anywhere. Whilst the Empire was telling its citizens Palpatine was still alive, admirals and moffs were engaging in skirmishes to remove their rivals. For this reason, a considerable amount of the Imperial fleet will have been destroyed in these skirmishes. Now, whilst all this was happening, the Empire had another problem, and that was resources. The rebels acted fast and with precision. They knew that the Navy was still the biggest threat out there, and for this reason, they moved to conquer shipyards, mines and factories, and most importantly, take control of fuel reserves. The Imperial fleet soon discovered that they were going to be running pretty low on fuel, and since they were constantly evading New Republic patrols, it meant that they were burning it quicker than ever. Not only this, but independent uprisings on what were once Imperial worlds meant that Imperial Star Destroyers were left without places to dock and resupply, meaning that they were burning fuel by staying out in space. 2 months following Endor, Kuat Drive Yards, the key supplier of Star Destroyers, was captured by Admiral Akbar, along with numerous other shipyards, almost putting an end to the Empire's supply of ships. Not only this, but TIE fighters were also getting hard to come by. Many destroyers were heading into battle with less than half the capacity. This would mean that they were far less protected against the rebels' superior fighters. So, as we can see, the Empire was in a pretty sorry state, and to make it even worse, it was a logistical nightmare. You see, since the Empire was in total chaos, no one really knew who was still alive, who was now technically a traitor, and who had any actual fleet ships left. So Imperial warlords were out here trying to coordinate offensives with fleets that had been wiped out months earlier, and trying to get in contact with admirals and moffs who had died near Endor. Now, there was one good piece of news in all of this. Gallius Rex, the new Chancellor of the Empire, who claimed control through stabbing everyone else in the back, managed to amass a reasonably big fleet of a few hundred Star Destroyers and various other ships. The bad news here was that he was going to use the remnants of this fleet to carry out Sidious's contingency plans on Jakku. So he was taking what was left of a formidable fleet and decided to apply it with a scorched earth policy. This, of course, led to the Battle of Jakku, where majority of the Imperial remnants are killed, including Rax's remaining fleet and Rax himself. Following this, the Imperial Navy was more or less gone. Anybody who was seen as important enough was sent to the unknown regions to begin work on the First Order. There will, of course, have been holdouts. However, it's pretty hard to hide one of these larger Star Destroyers, so the rebels were pretty quick on hunting them down and destroying them. It is also quite likely that the New Republic did commandeer many of these larger ships, as they were very formidable ships at the end of the day, and as we know, the New Republic didn't really want to have to go around manufacturing their own fleets, so they were likely just repurposing captured Star Destroyers. But, as we've discussed on a previous video, majority of Imperial commanders in the Navy would rather scuttle their ships and kill off themselves and their entire crew as opposed to be captured by the New Republic. So realistically, a pretty big portion of the Imperial fleet will have either have just been smashed into the closest planet or set to self-destruct. Ultimately, the Imperial Navy died a pretty agonising and relatively slow death, with the Battle of Jakku being its final act. realistically, it could have probably continued to be an incredibly powerful source, and maybe even kept the Empire in power for a fair few years if it was just concentrated on putting down the rebellion and not fighting itself. But like every other Imperial asset, its end almost indefinitely came due to the terrible command structure and culture of the Empire. But what do you guys think? How powerful was the Imperial fleet? Could it have put an end to the rebellion? And who do you blame for its destruction? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. I do hope that you enjoyed. I quickly want to say again, I am very, very sorry for the lack of videos over the last couple of weeks. It's been a hectic time. I should be getting back to a pretty normal schedule now, hopefully. But thank you for bearing with me with it. Hopefully I've got a bit more of a regular schedule going now, but I do really appreciate you guys cooperating with that. Please do remember to like, share and sub if you did enjoy, as it is really appreciated and it helps the channel grow. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at TheLoreGuy and tick the bell for regular updates. But most importantly, thank you so much for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.